welcome to What Lingers, the podcast where we uncover the questions behind people's stories. I'm Cristian Figueroa.
And I'm Liz Melchor, and we are the team behind Storytelling Lisboa, where once a month, 10 storytellers get on stage in front of 200 people and tell true and personal stories related to a theme.
It is always a great event, but there is a catch. We always have lingering questions for the storytellers and no format to ask them. Until now.
In this second season of What Lingers, we invite storytellers to revisit and listen back to their original story from that night, and then sit down with us for a conversation to uncover what lingers for us all.
Just a heads up, the recording of the story you will hear comes from the actual stage of Storytelling Lisboa, so the sound might be a little bit fuzzy.
Cristian, today I'm excited because I know the story happens in a place that you hold very dear, Amsterdam.
I love Amsterdam. Oh, the bikes, the canals, the sunsets, everything.
Dutchman?
Yes, there's a Dutchman in my life.
Oh.
Yeah, I love Amsterdam, but this story, it's really amazing because it's about love. And this storyteller really lingered with me because we were there when she told the story on stage, and it was something. It was very intense. So yeah, I'm ready. What about you?
Yeah, I love love. I love the story. Let's hand it over to Christine with her story for all those.
I'll carve your soul into mine. That's what it said in big black lettering, spray painted up on the wall in Amsterdam. I was in Amsterdam, wandering around in a daze, totally numb. And then I turned a corner and I saw, I'll carve your soul into mine. It was like a shock to the system or a lightning bolt to the heart. I actually had to sit down on a bench opposite to catch my breath. I felt exposed, but not in a way that made me want to cover up, because I had been struggling to put into words how I was feeling, and this graffiti did it for me. So I was living in Cologne, Germany with my boyfriend. He was tall and handsome and soft-spoken. He was kind to strangers and he loved his mother. And he said he would love me for the rest of his life. So when he asked me to move in with him, of course I said yes. But very quickly, things changed. He would say things like, you have nothing intelligent to contribute to a conversation. When we'd go out, he would say it was embarrassing being seen with me. And I remember thinking, what does he even love about me? Why did he ask me to move in with him? Until one day he said, you have no place in my heart and my soul. And that was all I needed to know. So I woke up one morning, and while he was at work, I wrote a note and packed a bag and left everything else behind. And I walked to the train station and looked up at the board and was like, what's the first train out of Germany? 90 minutes later, I was over the border in the Netherlands, and I never saw him again. But I remember thinking on that train ride, I hope I die before I love anybody else. I shouldn't have laughed so loudly, and I shouldn't have dressed so garishly, because he said he would love me forever, and I fucked it up. In Amsterdam, staring at that graffiti, I noticed there was an artist tag underneath, and it said Laser 314. I'd never heard of Laser 314, but when I got up from the bench and turned around, there was another Laser 314 piece staring me right in the face, and it said, until our silhouette carves itself into the ground. And I was like, did this Laser 314 guy know I was coming to Amsterdam and decide to leave me these inspirational quotes around the city? Because that's what it felt like. I'd be feeling like I deserved all this pain. And then I would turn a corner and I would see, you wanted control, now control wants you. I'd be feeling like, I'll never love again. And then I'd turn a corner and I would see, after love comes new love. I'd be feeling like maybe I'm becoming a new person, and then I would turn a corner and I would see I peel off my skin so I can reveal the inner me. Or I'd be desiring a new connection with a person, and then I would turn a corner and I would see I want to go down in a white heat. Because I'd never heard of Laser 314, I did a search online and I found a Facebook artist page, and I'd been taking photographs of all of his pieces that I came across. So I messaged him on Facebook and I sent him the pictures, and I just said how much I really liked his work. And to my surprise, he actually wrote back, and he was really flattered. And we struck up a correspondence. I guess you could say he became my friend. You know, he told me that he had a young son, but he wasn't with his son's mother anymore, and that made him really sad. And I was like, well, I'm going through a bad breakup myself. And he was like, you? I can't imagine you wouldn't have a boyfriend, especially with eyebrows like that. And I was like, thanks. I grow them myself. Okay, so I'm half Portuguese and half Lebanese. So it wasn't the first time someone had commented on my eyebrows, but it was the first time someone had suggested that I could like summon future lovers with them, you know? Anyways, I couldn't afford to pay rent in Amsterdam, so I went online and I joined a house sitting website, which is basically a service for rich people who are going on holiday and look for someone like me to look after their cats with renal failure or with diabetes. And so 5 days later, I had my very first house sitting gig in Brussels, and that lasted for 2 months. When that was over, back on the website, hustle, hustle, hustle. Then I was in Surrey, just outside of London, and then Copenhagen, and then Berlin, and then Paris, and then Vienna. I just did back to back to back to back house sits. But every time I had a few days in between house sits, I would make my way back to Amsterdam. In fact, in 1 year, I went back 8 times. And every time I was in town, I would message Laser 314, and I'd be like, hey, I'm in town. And he'd be like, hey, brows. That became my nickname. Here's the latest locations of my work. Go photograph, go have fun. So I would spend my days under the Dutch sun, over antiquated cobblestones, ducking into alleyways, looking behind dumpsters, hopping construction site fences, just so I could find his graffiti, because it made me forget that I was a bad person. And it made me forget that I deserved all this pain, like he said. Anyways, after a few years of being a peripatetic waif, like completely nomadic, I decided it was time to go home to Canada, but not before one final trip to Amsterdam. And so I messaged Laser 314 and I was like, hey, I'm in town. And he was like, hey, brows, here's the latest locations of my work. Go photograph, go have fun. You know, I never met him. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't even know his real name. Anyway, he sent me to like 12 different pieces that day, and it was the best day. I had so much fun. And the very last piece that he sent me to, you know, it was a really busy intersection in Amsterdam. It was around the corner from the Rijksmuseum, and so there were trams hurtling by, and bicycles dinging their bells, and tourists everywhere. And I turned the corner, and there, up on the wall, in big black lettering, I found, her brows were all it took. And it was in that moment I realized, maybe I don't have to see myself anymore the way the German did. Maybe I am a nice person, and maybe I didn't deserve all that pain. Thank you.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for being with us. I see that you're emotional and I totally understand it. Is this the first time that you've seen the story since you told it?
I think after you guys sent me the video last year, I think I watched it once.
Yeah.
And then I haven't watched it again.
Thank you so much for being here. Before we continue, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit for the people who are listening at home? And we know you from the stage, but just for people that don't know you well.
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Christine. I'm born and raised in Canada. I'm an author. My first book came out in 2023, and my next book's coming out in September. I'm a Portuguese citizen as well. And being in Lisbon at that time when we recorded the show was actually really special because I hadn't been back in Lisbon since I became a citizen in 2009. So it was like so exciting for me to have like a cultural homecoming as well. And I've done live storytelling before. I've done it in Canada and in the UK and in New York, but I'd never done it in my ancestral homeland. And so I just really love the community at Storytelling Lisboa. And I was just so happy to be there. And I'm very happy to be here today.
We loved having you, and your story has definitely lingered with us.
Your story was really nice, like really well structured. And for that edition, we had the almost.
Yeah.
The theme was almost.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what made you bring that story for a theme like almost?
Honestly, I feel like I came so close to losing myself in that kind of self-flagellation and hating myself and feeling like I deserved all the bad things that were happening to me. And so I feel like I was almost on this brink of never recovering, of never finding myself again, of never being the person I was before that incident happened to me. That's a very personal kind of interpretation to it. But there's lots of other different kinds of ways that I think the theme of almost intersects with the story. The love that I thought that I have that was almost there. And then with Laser 314, he's not really a friend. He's almost a friend, but he is a friend, but I didn't meet him. Lots of different things, I think, intersect with it. And so in terms of like my storytelling process, I really take it seriously especially when I signed up for Storytelling Lisboa. You guys were very much like, that has to have a beginning and a middle and an end. It can't be a topic. It can't just be like, I really like frogs or whatever. Something has to have happened to you. You have to have been like a different person by the end of the story. And I take that very seriously because it didn't really want to tell a story where it's, oh, what was me? My life is so hard. It was more like, I believed these terrible things about me. I believed it. And realizing through the way that I intersected with other people and how other people intersected with me comes about the change. So I was very much conscious about this story can't just be about me being heartbroken, because everybody's heartbroken. I'm heartbroken right now. Everybody's heartbroken every day, all day. It's not about that. It has to be about like what happened to me during that heartbreak that helped me get out of it. And so I really tried to focus on that. For a long time, I was really in the street art and graffiti community.
Can I interject for a second? As an artist or as somebody who appreciated it?
I was just a fangirl. Every city I would go to, instead of some people join the hop on, hop off buses or they join a tour, I would just put on really good running shoes and grab a camera and just hunt street art like all day long. If you guys have ever been to Paris, there is a really famous street artist named Space Invader, and he does those mosaic tiles of the old 1980s Space Invader characters. And he even has an app where if you take a picture of the Space Invader with the app, you get points like it's a video game. Anytime I'm in Paris, I don't need a tour. I'm taking pictures of Space Invaders everywhere I go. I was a huge street art fangirl. And just being able to connect with artists as they're creating their careers and finding their style and voice was really interesting.
You start with your relationship in Germany, in Cologne. And I'm just wondering if you could take us back to that time and tell us a little bit more, like, how old were you? Why were you in Germany? How did you meet your German boyfriend at the time?
So it's another interesting story. So it was 2012. I was 31. And it was a really interesting story. I was in Europe because the company Eurail and also Interrail, it's like the same company, they like social media and Twitter was so new and they were looking for ways to harness it. And they found me on social media because in the early days of Twitter, I had a really large following. And they were like, we're looking for somebody from North America who will ride the rails for free in exchange for blogging and tweeting about it. And we'll give you all the money, we'll give you all the rail passes, We just need you to every day blog and tweet and maybe make a YouTube video about it. And I was like, okay.
It was like you were an early influencer.
Yeah, it was like back in the day when having 10,000 followers on Twitter was a big deal. It's like now people have a bajillion followers on there. I'm not even on Twitter anymore, but yeah, so that was a big deal back then. And so they sent me the rail passes. They sent me all the money. I wasn't allowed to use more than 15 euros a day. So I had to be on a budget. That means I'm not staying in hostels and I'm not staying in hotels. This is before Airbnb. And so I couch surfed. And so who ended up being my boyfriend was the man that I couch surfed with. And so I couch surfed with him it was like November, December 2012, I want to say. And he was definitely into me. I remember not being that into him, but he was very persistent. And someone just telling you that you're fantastic all day long really starts to like, ooh, my ego can't fit through the door now. And so I fell hook, line, and sinker. And so by 2013, we were living together.
In the same house where you had couch surfed.
Yeah, and he had a beautiful palatial flat, like it was overlooking the Rhine in Cologne. And yeah, I was like totally besotted. I was besotted with him. And it was very quickly after I moved in that I realized I'd been love bombed. But at the time, this is like 2013, we didn't know the term love bomb.
Nobody was talking about it either. And like,
nobody was talking about it. I had no idea what that was. And so this man is telling me that he literally said things to me like I had awakened something in him that he had thought long dead. And one night he had actually cried to me and said, when I die, I will speak your name. Things like that.
Yeah.
And so you're like, I was like, what, 31? I was a baby. And so I was just like, ooh, this is the love I've always been waiting for. This is like movie love. And then as soon as I moved in, it was like the week that I moved in. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Jackass. Like he became a completely different person. And he would like yell at me for like random things. He would control what I wore. I wasn't allowed to leave the house unless I was wearing a black shirt and blue jeans, which is exactly what he would wear.
Whoa.
I would wear colors like pink, and he would say that I was garish and like embarrassing. And how can you walk down the street looking like this? And,
well, the whole package.
Yeah, exactly. But when you're in love, you like literally the way that the brain works is the brain thinks. He's told me several times that he loves me. And then now he's giving me this critique. He's doing it because he loves me. You only realize later when you're out of it, he hated himself and he wouldn't be happy unless I hated myself too, because he felt like he didn't deserve me. But if I don't like myself anymore, then he deserves me. It's all about the way that they feel about themselves, how they talk to themselves, and how they then project that onto their romantic partners. And that's what happened to me. And that was the first time I'd ever been love bombed. I've always been a feminist. I've always been really like, whenever I hear about women's struggles and women's issues and women not being able to have their agency or their rights within like romantic relationships, I've always been like, I'm going to say something. And then it happens to you. And it happens in such a way that you're so bewildered, you don't even realize that it's happened to you. It's so bewildering and it's so confusing that you end up putting up with things that in normal situations you wouldn't. I stuck around for quite a long time after that just to let it all sink in. But I was out of there on a year.
So you were there for less than a year?
Less than a year. I would say 8 months. I think I was there for 8 months. And then it got to a point where it was July 2013. I remember the day because it was a really traumatic day. It was July 15th, 2013, a Monday. That's how much I remember. And I waited until he went to work. I couldn't bear the thought of doing it in person. And I wrote a note on our typewriter and I left it in a patch of sunshine on the floor so that he might see it when he came home.
What did you write in the note?
I don't remember everything, but I do remember saying, please don't hate me. It's better this way. Please don't try to contact me.
Okay.
And I think I said, which obviously isn't true anymore, I said, I will love you for the rest of my life, which I definitely don't. I literally packed one bag and left everything else behind. I dropped my keys in the mailbox. That was the hardest part, was dropping my keys in the mailbox. And he was right across the street from the train station. So I walked to the train station, got the first train out of Germany, and that was that.
And so I guess you are in Cologne, you type this note, you leave the apartment. It sounds almost very cinematic, the way that you describe the moment. And I think also that it's just the scene itself, but also the amount of emotion. And then you end up in Amsterdam by accident. And then you see the first laser 314 or 314. You see these graffitis and I love it because they're speaking to you, right? And then you do the thing where you reach out to him over Facebook, because I guess it was before Instagram was big or something. And what was that first contact with him like? And what did you expect?
Honestly, I didn't really expect much because in those days, and actually still today, street artists operate under a cloud of anonymity. And they have to, because it's a legal gray area, you know, what they do. And so I really didn't expect him to write back. I thought that he was a really big deal. And so I thought, oh, he probably has a handler behind his Facebook artist page. And then when he wrote back with such like a personal message where he was just like, he had obviously looked at my Facebook page before he had responded. And he was just really kind and just really humble. They're like street artists, a lot of them can really just be like, yeah, I'm the shit. But not him. He was just, wow, you're so nice. Thank you for saying that. No one ever messages me. I don't remember how the correspondence really got going. He had looked at my Facebook page and suddenly he was asking me questions about me. And instead of just talking about his art, which was the topic at hand, he was like, so tell me about you. Where are you from? What are you doing? And the eyebrow thing came up really quickly after that because he had clearly looked at my Facebook and seen my pictures.
Which is cute because it's like you have this relationship with an internet stranger. He's a street artist. It's interesting, the sort of connections. But there's this imbalance, I guess, maybe you would say, because he looks at your Facebook, he sees your picture, and you say in the story that you've never seen what he looks like.
I never, at that point, I had no idea what he looked like.
Okay, so I was wondering if you have ever at a later point seen what he looks like, and if the picture matched your imagination, or just what that's like to interact with a faceless person that becomes really connected to you.
Yeah, in the beginning, because he was faceless and his artist page was very much, there were no pictures of his face. And if there was a picture of him, it was in silhouette, very shadowed. I had no idea for years what he looked like. I did end up meeting him. I was back in Amsterdam, of course, photographing graffiti. 3 or 4 years later, I used to go to Amsterdam a lot for my birthday. I don't know why. Amsterdam's just good for the soul. And it was my birthday and we were supposed to meet up, but a wire got crossed somewhere and he wasn't there, but he was there later after I'd already left. And he had published a book and it was a photography, like coffee table book of all of his work. And when I went back to the cafe where we were supposed to meet, he had left the book behind the bar and he had scribbled on the front page, "For Brow's happy birthday," and like the date or whatever. And then it was like a year later after that, we finally managed to go to dinner. And so I did actually meet him. I'll just leave it at that because he was a lovely person. He really helped me out in like a real time in my life that I really didn't expect that kind of kindness.
I think that's always the danger of these relationships over time without actually meeting them, is you imagine in a way, like in your story, he has this healing role or something. I don't know, like he's just a very important healing person. And so then you obviously imagine him in a certain way, and it's almost impossible to be that person that you probably imagined.
So it was a little bit platonic in both sides, because when you mentioned the graffiti he made about your brows, it could mean anything.
Yeah.
You find out what his graffiti meant because as an artist, maybe, I don't know, your messages gave him the confidence to start art again or write something or go and create these maps to send you. Or it was a platonic, like he really liked you and I don't know, he felt alive again.
We never really broached the subject. I never actually went up to him and was like, when you wrote "Her brows were all it took," what did you mean? I never asked him that. There was a little bit of a boundary there that we both never really decided to cross. It wasn't going to be one of those situations like you see on Catfish where like people are falling in love over the internet, never having met. And I was just, at that point, I was like, 32, 33. I was like, honey, I don't got time for this. After having been love bombed and feeling like I wasn't ready for a relationship for years afterwards, I was not interested in romantic stuff.
I can sense a lot of guilt in your story and a lot of heaviness. And you mentioned, I hope I die before I fall in love again. Yeah. That's a very strong statement. How was that process afterward for you, like internally, realizing that you were probably in a toxic relationship, of course, what was your mind state in all those probably 2 years afterwards? And I'm really curious, the German guy never sent you a message? He actually followed the instruction from the notes?
No, he didn't. A common tactic amongst men like this is that they want to be able to behave however they like, but they don't want you to hate them. They can't stand the idea of you hating them. And so he tried to provoke contact for months, if not years, after I had left. Like, he sent messages to my mother.
Oh.
He sent packages to her house in Toronto. I told him, leave me alone, and he just wouldn't do that. For years afterwards, I would get emails from him, and I never responded to any of them. He was one of those people where it's like, please don't hate me. I can't stand the idea of you hating me. And this is what happens when romantic relationships break up. There are going to be hurt feelings involved, and you may not be like a popular person, like effing deal with it. But he wouldn't deal with it. And it got to a point, the last time I ever heard from him, I want to say it was around 2020. It was in the middle of the pandemic. And he had left and then deleted an obscene message on one of my YouTube videos.
Ew.
And even though I'd only seen like the notification, and I screen capped the notification, but he had deleted it before, and you click on the notification and it pops up. And so I screen capped that notification and I sent it to him, and I was just like, I hope you realize that writing stuff like this doesn't make your dick bigger, because it doesn't. God. I literally said to him, I was like, I have not looked at your social media since the day I left you, and you know that, and you can't stand it. So you thought you would write me some message being like, hey, look at me, pay attention to me. And I was like, sorry, Cupcake, but if you want me to be interested in your life, has to be more interesting than mine. And really tore him a new asshole, which I want to do.
I can imagine.
He did that thing that all guys try to do. He wrote back and he was just like, I hope you realize that was not me and my intention. And like, I would never. And I just ignore. Like, I'm like, that was the one and only time I ever responded to anything he ever sent me over the decade. Because I was just like, you do not get to write something disgraceful and inhuman on my YouTube and get away with it.
Who continues to contact somebody for 8 years?
Miserable people.
I'm sorry, it's creepy to send a package.
Yeah, it's creepy to send a package. Like, it's creepy to get my mother involved. And he did that because he knew it would provoke contact, but I never rose to it. Like, he sent a message to my mother. I never wrote him. He sent a package to my mother's house. I never wrote to him. Like, I never responded to it. I was just like, you do you, Cupcake, but I am not about to disturb my peace for someone who clearly never evolved past high school.
Yeah. So do you think the process of going to Amsterdam and having these 2 years, like traveling around and having this kind of online relationship with Laser 314, it helped you in this process of healing? And
it was the first step. Healing is not, oh, now I get it. Everybody knows once you've been through something like this that it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Healing is not linear. It's not like this. It's like this. You have your good days and your bad days. And I would say that when Laser 314 did that for me, that was like day one, I think, of starting to realize, oh, I'm not a huge chunk of crap. I really believed that I was a terrible person. Like, I believed it. And that was the first day I was like, maybe that's not true.
He opened the door to a new possibility. I love structurally the way that you told your story is it crystallized the whole epiphany in a way of when you see that the one graffiti that you know is meant for you, actually, because it's the brows, because it's the nickname.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was probably at that point in my life, no one had ever done anything so lovely for me, like ever. That at that point in my life, that was the best gift I'd ever received. And the thing about street art is that it's ephemeral, right? It has a short shelf life. And so it wasn't there an hour later, like it was already gone. But I saw it, and that meant everything to me. There was no greater gift you could have given me at that point in my life.
But it really must have been, I don't know, the end of a long journey, the end of that year of traveling around. One of the quotes was about shedding a self, right?
Yeah, one of his poetry lines he had graffitied was, I peel off my skin so I can reveal the inner me.
Yeah. And I don't know, I guess when I heard your story in the transformation, that sort of fits, right? Like from somebody that you put so much on your shoulders after leaving the German guy. But now when I hear you talk about it, it's like you're putting a lot on his shoulders because he sounds like a fucking asshole.
Well, he was.
That's great. But it was a transformation. And it sounds like Amsterdam was like, not only was Laser 314 a big part of it, but also Amsterdam. And I was curious about that. Like, why did you keep going back to Amsterdam over this whole time? Because was it only for Laser 314? No, there must have been other reasons.
It was a huge impetus for sure to know that he's probably put up some more work and then I get to go hunt it on the streets and find it. There's something just really healing about pounding the pavement in the summertime in Amsterdam. It's just like one of the best cities. But it's fantastic. I always say, get outside of the canals. Once you're on the outside, like on the other side of Vondelpark, then it's this absolutely beautiful world just opens up to you. Once you get outside of the city center, the bike riding trails along like the locks are just gorgeous. And so for me, that was part of the healing. Lisbon has it too. Lisbon is very healing. Lisbon has all these incredible areas and all these incredible places to discover.
I just have to tell my little Amsterdam story for 1 second because I hated Amsterdam. I went there when I was 17 with my friend who was also 17. We did mushrooms and smoked marijuana. And I had a panic attack for 9 hours. So that's my single memory of Amsterdam, but I need to rewrite it because I know I remember the beauty, but I was in this field of not goodness.
I remember that towards the end you were pretty emotional, and I was there on stage when you shared the story.
Me.
And I hugged you for a couple of seconds. You were shaking. We saw the story, and it's very emotional. When I rewatched the video, I got emotional as well, and you got emotional today as well. Could you mind sharing a little bit of what was happening inside of you on stage that day?
Yeah, there were a lot of things. First of all, I was the first up. So there's a lot of nerves that come with being the first up. At the same time, I asked to be the first up because I knew that if I had to wait throughout the evening, my nerves would just build and I wouldn't be able to do it. So I was compounded by that. The nerves were compounded by that. But I was also, it's a very raw story. And so I was petrified that people in the audience were going to judge me and they were going to think I was some pompous ass or something. And so throughout, I remember very distinctly throughout the whole story, like my hands were shaking and I was like, everyone can see my knees knocking. This is so embarrassing. Why did I wear this skirt where people can see my knees? And so coming towards the end, telling the story is really emotional, but there's also a lot of emotion when the story is over and you know that you've done it. And so when you came up and hugged me, I was literally like, I was shaking. I was really, it was emotional. It was it was difficult to tell the story, and because I was so worried that people wouldn't like me. But then afterwards, when there was intermission, all of these people suddenly grabbed me by the arm and they were just like, this one man, bless his soul, he was like from the UK and he was like, you made me cry. And I was like, oh, so it was good. And he was like, it was really good. And then he like gave me this huge hug. And then afterwards on social media, a whole bunch of your followers on Instagram, they found me and they were DMing me and they were like, you made me cry. Your story was my favorite of like ever. I've been to Storytelling Lisboa a lot and this was my favorite. And like, so many people were so kind to me and so generous with their thoughts. And so that made me realize that, I don't know, maybe there is something about having a raw and real and vulnerable moment because we all have felt that way at one point or another, and we all can relate to that. Even if the contents of the story aren't the same as everybody else's story, it's the feeling of, I think humans are quite prone to blame ourselves for things that aren't our fault and to beat ourselves up for things that aren't our fault. And I know a lot of people have felt that way. I know it now because so many people flooded my DMs being like, I felt this way too. And I was like,
I think it's such a versatile experience to have that deep feeling like that I'm unworthy of love or that I'm unworthy or that something is wrong.
Yeah, that it's me, that I don't deserve love. Therefore, I should stop seeking it. Everything I'm doing is wrong. And it's not true. These are lies that we tell ourselves. And these are like our brain tries to play tricks on us and tell us these things. And I've learned that whenever my brain starts to go down that thought spiral, just, okay, everybody, let's just calm down. It's okay. I know that now. In the moment, I think I was petrified that everybody was going to be like, who does this fucking bitch with the eyebrows think she is?
In general, I think that those stories that you feel like the riskiest about, that feel so risky to get up there because you're like, oh God, the audience is going to see me and like I'm a loser or whatever that is. It's usually you have that fear because you're actually revealing your true self or whatever. And I think that when you told your story, like and even in rewatching it earlier today, like with the video, I felt a large amount of emotion. And I think a lot of that was just somehow you were really letting your emotions show on the stage, and you came across as extremely confident in the way that you spoke and everything. You also came across as really genuine and unafraid to show your emotions. We connected with that emotionally, and that was it was really powerful, and the story has lingered with us, and it's really great to get to talk to you today about it.
We know that you're launching a new book now in September this year, so could you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. My new book comes out in September. It's historical fiction, and it retells the great love story of Franz Kafka's life, but it's told from the woman's perspective rather than his. So her name was Milena Jesenská, and she was a Czech author in the early part of the 20th century. And she is the first person ever, male or female, to ever translate Kafka's work from German into Czech. And it is known that they met up twice for two lovers' trysts. And we know that they struck up a very heated epistolary kind of love affair. They wrote letters back and forth to each other. But his letters to her were published in a very famous book in the 1950s called Letters to Milena. But her letters to him, we don't know what happened to them. So in my book, I imagine what her letters to him might have said. And I imagine what might have happened on those two trysts. September 9th, 2025, that's when it comes out in North America. I think maybe it's like a month later in Europe that it comes out. Anywhere you buy books, you can pre-order it. And also, if you take it out from the library, I still get paid. So take it out from the library. I don't care. Like, get it wherever you buy books.
We just have one final question. How has it been for you to revisit your story today?
I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it. Revisiting it sometimes it's strange seeing yourself and hearing yourself. And so it can be, there's a little bit of a weird disconnect there. But I guess all I'll say is that I'm just really glad that I found the chutzpah, as they say, to get my ass up there and tell it, because I was so nervous, but I really wanted to. And I'm glad I did, because all these lovely people have connected with me afterwards and said such nice things, yourself included. And what greater compliment is there? What else can you ask for in this life, just to have affected each other in a positive way?
That's it for this episode of What Lingers.
Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And also follow us on Instagram at Storytelling Lisboa to keep up to date.
What Lingers is a podcast from the team behind Storytelling Lisboa and is produced by Jonny Bunyan. He's amazing.
Thank you so much for listening, and join us again for another edition of What Lingers.
See you next week.